Good morning and welcome everyone to the business Q&A sessions with Mita and Tosh. Hi Tosh, how are you doing?
Good morning, Mita. Not bad at all. Yourself?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Looking forward to getting...
You told me you went to London recently and it's just absolutely heaving.
London is back. We were saying, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's great for commerce. It's great for people, humanity. It's a bit of a worry from the COVID perspective, but I think the message is very much get on with it now, really, isn't it? So
I think that's definitely the case, and it's the right thing. As long as people are still exercising reasonable behaviours, and I know we're not all, and I say the world we there, all of us are a little bit guilty of that.
Yeah.
But we need to get back on it. We need to figure out what we're doing, and things seem to be getting back to that hustle and bustle. Certainly.
Yeah.
Urgency. Really. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's what's really key about today's subject, because actually, with all of the urgency, everyone trying to make up for lost time, access to talent, retaining talent, the market is crazy. So we put a poll up today. I have done a bit of a typo, I apologise, but essentially what we're asking you all is what your biggest concern is.
That was me. Don't take the heat from me, all right? That was me, my bad spelling.
No, it's all good. But essentially what we're asking everyone to let us know today is what your biggest concerns are around employee retention and attraction, or even retention, which...
all right, leave it.
And because there really is a challenge at the moment. Not only is it very difficult, and I keep talking about this perfect storm of the pandemic and Brexit, but essentially the challenge now isn't just access to skills, it's motivating people, because the whole landscape of the working world has shifted in 18 months. And all of a sudden, what motivates and engages and therefore creates maximum productivity and success, it's changed. The narrative has shifted.
The landscape changing has also meant a change in the balance of power, I think. Employees have readjusted the way that they're thinking now about my life. What am I doing with my life? Why do I have to go to work? Not that I don't have to work. They're not saying I don't want to work, but they realize they have more choices of what they want, how they want things to work, the flexible working arrangements. I had a client recently we were talking about who faced a discrimination claim. And because there are so many of them coming up, and they were worried about now them losing or winning, or thinking that tribunals will be deciding against the employers in these types of situations. But it's just that the landscape has changed, and it's becoming more and more aware that people have rights about flexibility, how they want to work, how they want to get paid, whether it's in different time zones, hybrid, all that stuff.
Indeed. And in fact, Kate, thanks for your comment. And I forgot to mention the chat box. So Kate, thank you for starting to use it. This is our interactive part of the session. We really want you to go away with specific solutions or ideas from our network here on the best way to handle challenges. And this actually is exactly that, the shift of power that you talked about, Tosh. Kate says, our biggest concern at the moment is retention and progression opportunities, because lots of people have reported feeling stuck and wanting new challenges. I mean, wow, that is huge. Essentially what you're saying is that they like working for you, but they no longer feel inspired or driven to do the work. And there could be there's a few reasons. I think going through something like we've been through as a country, as a world, really, it's almost decompressing from that. And I think people are looking to feel normal, but aren't quite there yet, and thinking, what's not right? It's a bit like when someone breaks up in a relationship and all of a sudden they've moved house, moved country. They think that to fix that feeling, they've got to change everything. And I think that's a little bit of what's going on at the moment with employees. I certainly know, everyone in our world at the main group really wants to progress and push on and almost put this behind us. So I do wonder if these feelings of feeling stuck and wanting new challenges is part of that decompressing and rebalancing.
I'm a big fan of people like Kerwin Ray, Tony Robbins, and well. And you know what he says the definition of happiness is?
Tell me.
Progress. And it makes sense, doesn't it? It's never when you get there. When you want to earn a certain level of salary, you get there. Well, you're not happy. You want to move on to the next one. If you're climbing Mount Everest, when you get there, great, I've done it. Well, now what?
Yeah.
But it's always progress and development, and personal development and professional development, and all those things.
And this
hit it right on the button there in terms of what today's webinar is essentially about. Progression.
and essentially motivating our people to feel like they're progressing, and actually remembering we don't have to have all the answers as an organization. Perhaps set up a brainstorm or a mind map. Ask people, what does it look like? What sort of challenges do you want? Because sometimes people don't necessarily want to change their role, but they want to progress. They might want training opportunities. So maybe they're good at something and they want to train that out to other people. Maybe they want to mentor. Or it could be that they want to shift division and work in a whole new area of the business. And I think it's being smart as an organization to remember the cost of replacing people. I did a poll on LinkedIn yesterday, a piece around retention of people, and it costs 3 times the salary when you lose someone. That's not just the cost of the salary, the cost of hiring, it's time lost. It's the cost on other people who cover that role while you're replacing, and it's the impact on the brand and reputation. So there's so much power behind retaining your people. So I think, you can't give them everything they want on day one, Kate, but what you can do is say, we're listening and we'd like to understand what new challenges look like for you, because for some might be being social secretary of this sector, or of this team, or it might be doing charity work, and saying I think it's important to dig deep and say, we want to address this. Unless you have a specific feeling that you want, let's also address the bigger picture and where we could possibly create some solutions, be creative together, not losing sight of the business objectives, might I add. Always the business strategy comes first.
It's got to be that way, isn't it? And what you're talking about is alignment. One of the things, again, we're going to end up talking about when we get through. But, I don't know how we've done this, Nami. So we've done dived straight into the webinar topics.
I know.
Let me do a quick housekeep, just so we're clear. So anybody that's watched for the first time, just now we're doing this, is we've got a live chat that Kate's already put a challenge in there. This is your webinar. We've created this for the last 18 months, doing this week in, week out, pretty much. Just addressing current issues that are relevant to you, whether they're HR, whether they're recruitment, whether they're business, that we are business owners as well, and people of industry. So we thought with our expertise, we could pass this on. So please use us. Put the questions in the chat. And if you are feeling shy for any reason, I don't know why, I think we're quite approachable, then take it offline. You've got our contact details. If you registered for this webinar, you can contact me or myself directly, and we'll happily help deal with any issues. And our promise is always to answer any challenges that you put in the chat box today. We'll answer them by the end of this session, which is roughly 30 to 40 minutes in total. So it should be done by 20 to 12 at the latest.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tosh. So the areas we're going to cover, as we said, today is all about our benefits, rewards and perks, even more important than salary in this post-pandemic world. We're looking at how rewards and benefits have evolved post-pandemic and why that is. Yes, there's hybrid working out there, but even, from the comments already, the power has shifted, and what drives people has shifted. So really working out what that looks like. Secondly, there are legal implications around rewards and benefits, and there can start to be discrimination, and there can start to be cases. We hear about long service awards and how that can be discriminatory or ageist. So let's talk about some of the legal ramifications. Looking at the difference between rewards, benefits, perks, like really thinking about the different tools you have as an organization, and ultimately how we be creative and inventive to then retain our people, which essentially is a summary of just something covers the whole area that we're going to cover today.
Yes.
Well, I love a stat, Tosh, so I'm going to start with a stat, and this, I think, again, sets the mood for what the answers are coming out of today. So a recent survey from Workplace Intelligence suggested that 75% of employees are willing up to give one benefit or perk, and big things like healthcare, bonuses, paid time off, for freedom to choose their work environment. Wow. I mean,
it's a choice that's been developing over the course of many, many years. I would definitely say over the last decade or so. And the pandemic just pushed it up to the forefront of everybody's mind about how we can and can't do things, right? For years, employers have said you can't work from home. That's gone right out the window. And now it's employees saying, well, I don't understand why. And tell me why. And they're more knowledgeable about what their rights are in such circumstances, right?
And I think it's about having a reasonable conversation based on fact and desire of employees and organizations, but ultimately fact. What are the abilities of each department and individual of working remotely? And actually, I'm a big believer that it has to be hybrid. I don't think very many organizations, and I'm sure there'll be lots of people out there that say, no, actually, we do it 100% remote and that's fine. But I feel more from my expertise that it's important to have some in the office involvement, because you get collaboration, you get creativity, you get the cultural realignment and strengthening, to name but a few. So I do think there's this hybrid approach that we talk about, but it has to be, I think, what employees want is to be treated as an individual and not sort of have a mass blanket policy applied to everyone.
I think that's right, but I suppose the mass blanket policy is being applied depending on what the output or the outcome is. You know, if performance is affected because of this, well, that is something that the company should address unless they're prepared to take the hit, and they shouldn't have to. And I know you and I are slightly on opposite sides of the coin a little bit, in the sense that, yes, I do believe we should look after our people. I'm certainly not suggesting we don't, but it's got to go part and parcel, that it's a two-way street. 100%. And the employers, then their issue is communicating that effectively so that their employees are on board.
Yes.
You know, I'm not that much of a, contrary to this topic, which we'll get into in a minute, I'm not that much into the benefit of certain perks and salary increase and so forth, because then all you are is waiting for the next bidder. You know, there's got to be something more than just the amount of money that's involved, and obviously they're looking at flexibility and things like that now. So
it's got to be a partnership that works for both sides, right? And yeah. I agree. It's not about being held ransom, but it's about having a sensible analysis of each role. And that's why my biggest pet peeve is that we don't use job descriptions enough in the management and productivity of individuals, because I think the job description has evolved, not necessarily the work people do, but the competencies that they need to demonstrate whilst doing it. And if you as an employer can go from saying to your employee, you must answer the phone on the first ring every time, as an example, or you must get the deadlines achieved every time, you say, we will do a customer satisfaction survey and you must score 95% plus. Or we will do a 360 review every quarter of your peer group and your customers and your customers, and get a percentage score back. So really measuring output and what output looks like for that individual. It doesn't need to be external. It could be that you as a manager have certain things, efficiencies you can check, or a list of things that need to be done by a certain time, but not looking at what they're doing in the job, but the quality and quantity and impact of the output.
Yep, I agree. I totally agree with you. I think I'm looking at something right now, which is a book called Drive by Daniel Pink. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, you've mentioned it before.
Yeah, and he's all about not talking about just looking at incentives that are financial and looking at what motivates people, which then brings us on to what's the thing you used to always say? Culture eats strategy for business, for breakfast. Or
strategy for breakfast.
And it's about intrinsic motivators. You know, me, so what that, you definitely know what that means, and any business owner knows what that means. What that means, there was something that drove you from being an employee to now doing this stressful job of being a business owner, or being a manager, or whatever level you want to talk about.
Yeah.
But there was something in you that pushed more than what you were, or to become more, and that tends to be in alignment with what it is that the company are doing. Their mission, vision, as I like to call it, mission, vision, values. All those things. The other bits are nice perks, but when the intrinsic motivation is already in there, it's almost like that won't motivate them more. It's just a, well, thank you.
Yeah,
more like a gratitude thing, I think, rather than it's going to get me there.
And it's about belonging, isn't it? It's it's about feeling part of something, as you said, which is why my new favorite phrase, and I heard this from Lord Billamora when I won the award a couple of weeks ago.
I love the way you did that.
He's actually the head. He's the chairman of the CBI, and he's the founder of Cobra Beer. So he's a big deal. And he was speaking, and he was saying he'd just come from COP26, and he was saying that it's not just about businesses that are good in what they do, but businesses that are good for the world. And I always talk, because we've got a not-for-profit side and a commercial side, and the not-for-profit side are really great at attracting talent, because what they stand for and what they do is above the door. It's in the title, it's in the first mission statement. Whereas the commercial world, not always can they deliver what they're doing that is good for the world, as well as doing what, and actually everyone can actually find that out, even if they have a really strong environmental, social and governance policy and sustainability policy, you know, talking about this is how we add value out to the world, and during that, this is what we do that's good for the world as well. People will really start to buy in, making sure your diversity and inclusivity policy isn't just for a piece of paper, but demonstrating it. So when I talk about the shop window and what your shop window stands for, like when you're attracting talent, that's also going to retain your people. And do a talk on that. Talk to them about how they can get involved in enhancing those objectives as well as their day job and their daily requirements.
But I suppose it comes a bit down to finding those people in the first place. How do you find those intrinsically motivated people? How do you align them with your culture so that they really want to thrive and they'll do what it takes to work with you? Because the flip side is when you're just looking at things that aren't intrinsic motivators, or you're looking at things which are just external in a sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't work in the same way. Let me put it that way. You can get performance, don't get me wrong, but as I say, they'll just end up going for the highest bidder. So it's understanding. So that's your bag. What is it in your experience, Meeta? And I think that's the key question from this webinar is what is it in your experience? Is it that drives people to companies? What is it that attracts them in the first place?
Yeah.
What is it actually that keeps them there? I know we're using the word culture quite freely. Well, give us some details. What gets them there first? What should we be doing?
Well, we should be, any employer looking to attract people should be very clearly showing who they are, what they do, and what they stand for. Very easily accessible information. So your shop window, make sure it sings from the rooftops about who you are and what you do, what you stand for. Don't just say it from a leader perspective. Have your employees talking about it. Have videos. Have a work for us page that says this is A Blogs' journey. They started here and they are now here. This is B Blogs' journey. They wanted to do this. We set up a new department that dealt with that idea. Or this is so and so. They've been with us 50 years and this is what they do. You know, let people bring to life what it makes it good about working for you. Then this is the thing where I'm a big believer in advertising your business, not in we are looking for, but do you want to work for an organization that delivers success, makes people happy, creates a winning career for people, and then go into the detail of what the role is. Really attract people. And that's one of my biggest, I want to say pet peeves, because we're so busy on the ground, but as a team, I always talk about telling a story through an advert, and actually what ends up happening is people write really quickly what they need. So it's muscle memory. We think that we want to tell people what we're looking for, but actually what we want to do is do it from the point of view of the candidate. Put yourself out there, what it means to work for you, and then you'll attract the right people, and then they'll stay for longer because they're already aligned. And that culture that word isn't just about culture. It's about being wanting to work for an organization like yours, what you do, how you add value to the world, what it feels like. It is important because you spend more time, whether you're not at the office more anymore, you still spend a lot of time talking to these people. And finally, these are the people that are going to have control of your future. So you need to feel aligned, that you trust this organization. So this is why I always say that when you're doing an interview process, do what you say you're going to do. Don't rearrange, don't cancel, don't leave them hanging when you want to give them feedback. They're not going to feel valued. And it is a real candidate market right now. So these are all really important things. And I'll tell you what, I know that was a bit of a speech, but I can't, say that strongly enough.
So let me take it further. So I know cases where that's exactly why they took the job. They ended up taking the job and it was a horrible boss. They did not embody those values or what have you. Forget that. That's a whole different story, in terms of a situation. I'm still looking at it from the external point of view of a candidate. So they see the mission, vision, values, those things kind of fit. You know what? I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
But what else? Obviously the salary has to be at the right level, whether it's market rate or not. But what are the benefits? Flexible working, that's got to be another obvious one. Some kind of flexibility, whether you have kids or don't have kids, just something that gives you that kind of freedom or that kind of control over your work life. What are the key elements, if you noticed, if there was a pattern there that we should be thinking of? I'm not saying it should be that level or this, but what other benefits and perks should we be all be offering or thinking about?
Well, funnily, I've actually been doing some research on this, because I pick up my vibes and experiences from what I'm hearing, but I also like to see what else is going on out there in the world. And one of the things that has really come forward is recognition, because people aren't sitting face to face anymore, and people can't just give that, hey, really well done, guys, so and so just did this, woo. So actually having some structure around feedback and recognition is really important. And actually, here's a stat: when recognition occurs, 14%, there is a 14% increase in engagement and productivity. Well, imagine if you got a 14% increase, dropped your attrition rate by 14%, up to your output. I mean, that's huge, 14%. It's not 2 or 3, that's massive.
You can take that another layer as well, Mita. That doesn't just mean recognition from the boss.
No.
Probably, in my experience, also means public recognition. Recognition within your workplace, with your peers, recognition with your clients, talk about whatever levels you want to, but that social recognition of, good doggy or whatever it is, that's not the right phrase. No, it really works. We did the same thing in our office. 40%
of employees during the pandemic felt underappreciated. Can you believe that? Because people look, and as an owner and as an employee working from home, but also looking after my people, the bosses were going through hell, but every employee was going through hell as well. And it's the ones that were really nurtured and listened to, and not necessarily fixing what their problems were, but just listening, that engaged. And so many employees, we've heard stories, they come to us and say, I'm leaving because I wasn't treated well during the pandemic. So what I would say is, if things went wrong till then, let's start getting it right from now, because there's still a lot of uncertainty, a lot of shortage. And it's interesting, the poll, Tosh, about the concern around retention and attraction, the 4 options were incentive schemes, salary rates, getting the culture right, and the ability to do the job, skills and track record. And the top 2 are the ability to do the job, people with the right skills and track record, and then salaries. Because salaries, even though we're talking here about our rewards and benefits more important than salaries, people want the package. And I think that's where employers have to get really smart about how they market their comps and bends package. I talk about the triangle a lot. We take care of you holistically. We help you build your career, we help you find me time, and we help you and develop yourself, and we make sure you have that work-life balance so you get time with your loved ones. And if you can demonstrate your rewards and benefits package reflects that, very few are doing that in that way. And it's something we try to do in the main group, and it's something that I have to say, right, it's not just a piece of paper that we do at induction, but it's something we should continually be revisiting. And the manager saying, right, let's look at your world holistically. And that's where, training comes in, coaching, asking, I'm feeling a bit stuck, I feel like I need a new challenge. Come back to me with some thoughts about what that looks like.
I really like that. That's really different. You didn't just say what it is they're getting, you're explaining how they're getting it. And most of all, the why. We go on about the why a lot. Understanding that, look, we're going to reflect that we're an organization that really believes in you having that work-life balance, etc. And you know what? It's the phrase, I've got your back. That kind of family unit of high performers. That's your ideal work environment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Feeling like you're part of a winning team where you're listened to, respected, and you're safe. Really.
That also, not the topic of today's webinar, but that also means knowing when to say, okay, maybe this isn't working out, and to let some of those that don't fit go too. So, you can't make everybody squeeze it. Can't get a round hole in a square peg or something like that.
No, exactly. Round hole, square peg. And actually, a lot of people have changed shape in this time. So again, as an employer, we're talking a lot about retention, but make sure they are the people with the right skills and salary level. Unfortunately, there is a real, inflation's going up. We know that the government are pushing higher salaries. Essentially, there's going to be a period of adjustment when we're paying more, and it's going to take time for our sales to balance as an economy. But really look at your business and think about the cost of not having the right people in the job as well, because the opportunity cost of not retaining the right person, as we said, hiring is double to triple the cost of an annual salary. So really think about what the impact is. We've just got another comment actually from Janine. Janine says, we carried out a staff survey on hybrid working and everybody wanted it. Some people also wanted help with equipment and furniture to make their home working environment better. We are considering introducing a scheme for employees to get access to ergonomic chairs. Is anyone else doing this? Well, we definitely, and it'd be great to hear from the room if anybody else has or hasn't done this, even a yes or no would be good. But I know for a fact, Janine, in fact, last week's webinar, I spoke about the fact that employees are asking for, they may not be spending on travel, and some employers have readjusted salaries, but employees are asking for allowances to make their home working space more ergonomic. So it's definitely happening. And we did that. We offered chairs, we offered desks, we offered, earpieces, depending on how people worked in the office, to make it as equal to that.
Yeah, you know, I love hearing this. That's not been my experience. Then I won't hear about the goody stuff in my game. I only hear when there's sorts of problems. So it only tends to be when there's a requirement.
Yeah.
You know, following a risk assessment, maybe because of a disability or pregnancy or whatever issues there are.
Yeah.
But people just doing this off their own back and being proactive about it, Janine, is great to hear.
And I say yes. I say
a lot about you and your organisation, quite frankly.
And again, it's a lot of it is if you actually made it available, not everybody would even need to take it. But the fact that you're making it available, or you identify a chair that is sensible, reasonable in price and ergonomic, and you say this is available if you want it. As I said, not everybody will have room for a new chair, or they may already have a good chair. But I do feel that saying, listen, you said and we did, makes people feel that they have a voice and that they're cared about, the holistic approach.
And Rita, there's two things I wanted us to talk about also, which is connected to this, which goes back to the poll. Interesting, the two biggest concerns that people have are salary rates.
Yeah.
So that means meeting the right level of salary that employees are looking for. So that's a revenue issue, or they think it's not worth it. We can address what that means. And the second one, surprisingly, actually, for me, and you say surprisingly because I know you asked to put this one in the poll, Amita, ability to do. Oh dear, there's a couple of typos now. Run attention and the do. Little do. Ability to do the job and skills and track record. I wouldn't have thought that was an issue at all, because when you're recruiting, it's a given, the skill bit. It's only maybe later on, maybe things don't work out. I understand that, but it's high. It's right up there with salary rates. So can we get first into the salary rates? What has been your experience with people saying, well, you know, I want to get this person, but my budget is X. And probably one of the first things you think is, well, you're not going to get a person for that. You need to be looking at that, depending on the nature of the job, right? What do we do? How do we get that gap?
And that's why engaging with consultancies like us helps employers do that. It's not just we're looking for a person, but what are the market rates right now? What is retaining people? What should we be offering? How should we be dividing this role? Just before I finish that, Janine, Yvonne has replied, in case you haven't seen it, saying they are providing laptops, extra screens, stands, work mobiles. I'm looking at work mobiles now as well in our business, and £100 contribution for chairs. So there's a bit of a benchmark there as well, and that's very, very common that these options are out there. So
maybe you know what, they might be common in your world. It's certainly not in my legal world. Brilliant. I think that's really generous.
It's not all wrong, but if you think about £100 for a chair versus salary costs, rehiring, retraining costs, really think about what you want to do, but treat each person individually. Really look at that individual and think, are they the right person for the role? What they're asking for, whether it's a new role, whether it's a chair, whatever it is, and everything in between. Treat them individually. I think that means a lot to people. And you can say we've got a blanket approach, but we look at it individually. So you don't have a precedent, but you can still tailor. So sorry, back to your question, Tosh. I mean, I've just picked up that stat that actually people would forego salary. 75% of employees would forego salary for flexible working. So what I would say to an employer is be competitive, but if there is if there's a barrier between what you can offer and what the person wants, have a conversation. You know, say OTE of 50, but you can do this in a 4-day week and we'll pay you 42. So it's more than the 5-day week average, but it's more than being paid more than 4 days. You save 8K. You get the return depending on the skill set, And there may be a way to agree that. So they get a day to themselves, but they which might be worth more than the basic. Or you say, you do, you join us at this salary. These are the milestones you have to meet. Then you will be adding value back to the business. Because this is something people always say, I want this. And we say, well, joining us, there's a lot of input we have to do to induct you, train you, get you adding value to the business. When you're adding value, we'll revisit your role, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, whatever that is, but keep that conversation going and be really clear on what they have to do to achieve that salary. So it doesn't have to be a black and white conversation around salaries, I would say.
Yeah, it makes sense, because there's other things that will fill their cup, which is what this is about, right?
Yeah. Can I please, sorry, I was going to say what's really interesting about the benefits, perks, and all the rest of it. So rewards are part of salary. Benefits are the additionals, like the gym and the medical. And then perks are the things like, oh, we're going to give you pizzas at the desk, or we're going to give you travel vouchers. But these perk popularities have shifted. They've gone from being things that keep you in the office and at the desk, like a ping pong table or beer fridge or gym memberships. And they've actually become more around taking care of the individual holistically. So debt support and advice on personal finances. I am reading from a list because I just thought I noted it down because it just makes sense. It's reading the market, reading your people, and really understanding where they are at the moment. Working from home allowances, flexible working, longer paternity leave, virtual team building and exercise classes, for example, because yes, we want our people collaborating, but if people think, oh, I have to go in just to meet other people, they're not really going to like even if when they get there, it's like, oh yeah, this was really good, actually. It's nice to mix it up. And expanding of health benefits, that's what people are working on. It is mental well-being, improving health, and having flexibility. That's what people want.
Absolutely, and it makes sense, doesn't it? It just requires a bit of thinking about, really.
Yeah, it's a straightforward journey, provided it's looked at in black and white. You know, like, it's not overcomplicated. And I think it's really a brave time for employers to say, look, we've never done this before. Do a poll, do a survey. If we were to revisit our benefits, please email with suggestions. Then you get the top suggestions and say, right, these are the top suggestions. Please say which one you'd prefer. So really distill it down and say, this benefits package has been for the people, by the people. We've designed the rewards, we've designed this, but we've put a budget towards this, and this is what you've chosen. And every year, a bit like we do chosen charities of the business, you can say these are the chosen perks. So again, people feel part of that. I think that's so powerful. You get a say in your rewards and benefits package.
Yeah, absolutely, that makes sense, because you're actually getting what they want. It makes sense.
But we do incentives like that. We do say, we're doing an incentive this month. What would you like to see as one of those incentives? So then, you know, we can't do all of them in one go, but we start to see what's interesting to the team out there on the ground.
So being the lawyer, which is going to be seen as being the voice of doom, is be careful.
What about when it goes wrong?
Yeah, but be careful with these things, because it's about applying things consistently. You know, one of these things I see as a lawyer, which always rings alarm bells, is when they have a discretionary policy. You know, discretionary bonus schemes or commission schemes or whatever else it is. If it's in black and white in the contract, it's clear, that's fine. As long as you're applying that across the board with everybody, there's not inconsistency of treatment, or, you know, somebody goes on maternity leave and they don't get their commission or their bonus that they would have otherwise have got, all those sorts of things. And as long as all that is applied consistently, you're fine. But the idea is, you don't just think of it yourself. Speak to somebody who knows about comps and bends and the application of those things and how those things can work, and have it in black and white. I'm not saying you can't have the discretionary policy with those sorts of things or those benefits, but be clear if it comes to the crunch that you can explain how that discretion is exercised.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in front of a judge and you say, well, why did you give it to him? Well, because it's a woman, or it's somebody that's disabled. No one would ever say that. But if, you know, if that's what it's implied, or if it indirectly is because of that, actually this person has been left out of the loop because they went on maternity leave, for example, or was on sick leave, they're disabled. Yeah. This starts to cause all sorts of legal implications. So just have something that can be applied consistently.
And this actually comes to when you're thinking about your perks. For example, religious days are something that have become more considered and accounted for. So everyone gets an allowance for a religious day. What are the people that don't believe in God? Like, what are they going to feel? And it's amazing that what is intended and what's perceived is miles apart. And actually, you always talk about this, is that cases can be brought on what a person perceived rather than what was the reality and intention.
Correct. Exactly right. The discrimination laws allow for perceived discrimination. So if I treat you, if I'm your employer in the workplace and I treat you badly, Mita, because I think your sexual preference is something else, and even though you don't have that sexual preference, as an example, you can bring a claim for harassment for against me for treating you that way, even though you didn't have that sexual preference. So being gay, for example.
It's like if an employer gave flexible working to parents, but nobody else. Somebody who didn't have children could then say that they are made to feel, less. Like, so what I'm saying is, have
less
your
favorable treatment.
Less
favorable treatment. So not believing in God is also a philosophical belief. Which is covered under the legislation.
Then how would an employer put that into a rewards and benefits package or a perk? You get a day off to celebrate your religion, or whatever that is, and what do you say to those that don't? Like, how do you work
that? That has not been a situation I have seemed to have come across in my travel so far.
Yeah.
What tends to happen is, if you're in the UK, you are having 28 days minimum plus eight public bank holidays, right? That's the legal minimum. If there's an enhancement, there's an enhancement, but it's for everybody.
Yeah.
How you want to take that because of your separate religious beliefs or for any other reason is entirely up to you.
Yeah.
And it's taken out of that. They don't necessarily just offer you another day because you're that in person and you have that type of religion. That isn't something I've seen separately happening in my experience.
So you could say we give 2 personal days, whether you want to use that for religious events or personal time or charity work. You can pick.
Precisely. Then there's no quibble, right? Everybody takes the same time up. How you choose it, apart from the bank holidays, obviously, is up to you.
And there's this whole thing about
closures. If there's any Christmas closures, those sorts of things as well.
Yeah. And there's this thing about, so when we started looking at benefits and long service, there was this thing that said if you give more than 5 days for long service, it can be seen as ageist and discriminatory.
Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't really get into it too much because I disagree with it, but it's true. So what they're saying is when you are benefiting or giving perks to people who have been there for long-term service, they tend to be people who are older, and that is therefore discriminatory against people who are younger.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all sorts of arguments we can go around the house with that, but if you're rewarding for loyalty, I would have thought is really what that is about. And there are ways around those things without overcomplicating it, which is where there's some sort of objective justification for doing it. A greater good is another way of putting it, right? But yeah, you're right, absolutely right. You've got to be careful if you're giving those benefits with time, that it could be regarded as being ageist.
So there we have it, finishing on a word of caution that whatever you offer, make sure it's fair and consistently applied. But at the same time, make sure you really do look at everyone as an individual. It's quite nice having a pick and mix type approach to benefits or perks.
I don't want to leave it on a word of caution. I want to leave it on a word of there's help out there, and we're that help amongst anybody else you might know. Call us directly. There's no catch to it. And either we can give you some guidance, or we can get our hands dirty and actually get involved in resolving the headaches that you've got. So. There's no, our strap line is often, if you've got the questions, we've got the answers. Yeah. So you use us is what I want to leave it on.
Very much. Thank you, Tosh. And I'm going to add as well then, which is that we are actually helping employers negotiate packages with employees. So whether you utilize our recruitment arm, attraction arm for the full process, or you just want somebody where you need to negotiate that endpoint, and sometimes you need an agent in between to take the emotions out of it. And remember, we're all still on the same team. We're doing that. And I'll give you that advice for free. It's not something I'm saying. It's not a pitch. It's just saying sometimes you can spend all that time, hire it, looking, advertising, all of the process. And at the end, it falls apart because of a misunderstanding during the package negotiations. We can help with that. So anyway, on that note, Tosh, thank you. As always, thank you everyone for signing up, logging on, contributing, and also giving us your poll input. The final was 40% salary rates, 40 40% around skills and track record. Culture was second. And at the moment, people don't feel that there's a challenge around incentive schemes. So let's keep it that way. But we hope today's session was useful. We'll see you next time at 11 again.
Thanks so much, everybody. Meet to see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye all. Bye for now.